I will always be a fan for the strength, the resilience, the passion, the grit that Black women possess.
Yeah.
And Black women who taught me that I deserve to seize any space that I want to be in.
Yeah.
And to not shrink. And to show up as myself fully.
Look both ways when you cross that street. Dot your I's and cross your T's. Measure twice, but cut once. Love life, live it up, bruh. Dream is good, do the work too. There ain't nothing you can't work through. And there ain't nothing I can't handle. There ain't nothing I can't handle. I look to the sky. And I thank God that I'm alive. I look to my wife. And I thank God she by my side. I've been through a lot, but I survived. It weighs on my heart from time to time. But there ain't nothing I can't handle.
Peace, big love, big blessings, even bigger living, everything that come with it and everything in between. You are tuned in to Thinking Out Loud with Samuel David. It's just a conversation. And I'm your host, Samuel David. And I got a special guest today. Before I introduce my guest, though, listen, if you're watching this, make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button right now. Hit the like button right now. Tell your peoples to tune in right now to Thinking Out Loud with Samuel David. It is a safe space, a conversational space, a space of perspective, a space of accountability, empathy, and just really digging into what life looks like for those around us. Now I get to introduce my special guest. This guest is special, as is all guests, right?
All guests.
But this guest is special. He's the Chief of Staff for Lead for America, a community advocate, a community activist. Man, this man is somebody that when I'm out and about and I'm in the places looking to create change, looking to create impact, I know he's going to be there, right? Even if I'm not there, because I won't be at all of them, I know he's there. Today, I have the most amazing Mr. Joseph Shepard.
What's up?
Joseph, thank you for joining me today.
Of course,
man.
absolutely. You call and I answer.
Ah, that's dope. That's dope. Stuff like that makes my heart smile. So, I start every episode with this question.
All right, I'm ready.
How is your spirit?
Today, my spirit is energized.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I'm ready to do some things. I'm a visionary.
Talk to me.
So today, I feel like through challenges that I'm going through, whether it's in the workspace or the personal space, I've just chosen to see brighter days ahead.
I love that.
Low key, I did have therapy yesterday, so that has a lot to do with it. I've been doing therapy for about 2 months now, and that's been a game changer for me. I've gone on and off throughout my life, but going back to really unpack some things has been really helpful for me. And so I feel refreshed. I feel energized, re-energized, and ready to do some things.
Ooh. Now, listen, I don't know if you know, I don't put a lot of questions down.
Yeah.
Because it's just a conversation. We just think out loud. I love to hear where your spirit is at, because you said a lot of things. You're a mindful communicator, for one. You said today. Today for one, right?
Don't ask me about tomorrow, because it may be different, but today, yeah.
Right. And I think that's great. Grace and space that we have to give ourselves is the opportunity to recognize where I'm at today.
Yep.
Where I may be tomorrow, where I was at yesterday. Energized.
Absolutely.
That's major.
Yeah.
That's major. What's got you energized? Talk to me.
People, place, possibility. I think the folks who I'm around in my workspace, they're giving me a renewed sense of hope in the world. I think the work that I do, my 9 to 5 is, again, being a chief of staff. And I tell people that's all about people. It's about culture. Yeah. It's about meeting people where they are at. And that has taken me a long time to understand my role as a chief of staff. That was a new role for me. I never desired to be a chief of staff. Someone saw that in me and gave me the opportunity to serve. And I think in this new evolution of our organization, where we're expanding and we're growing, it requires more work for me. It allows me to dream a little bit, but to stretch others to show up as the greatest version of themselves too. And that's always exciting for me.
Heck yes, man. And I know you lead.
Yeah.
Right. And leadership is in the title of the space you work. Yeah. And it's in your action on a daily.
Thank you. Because that's what's most important to me, is that my values are made evident through my actions. That's something I discovered in college.
Okay.
And it's also something that I really unpacked growing up in the church. My father is a pastor. I'm a PK.
No doubt.
And, I think that there are a lot of people who can quote scripture very well, and they can talk about what it means to be a person of faith. But the people who are of faith, who have inspired me the most, are the ones who live it out through their actions.
Yeah.
It's about how we see the least of people among us. It's about how we show up in the form of restorative justice.
Yeah.
Not judging somebody for the worst day of their life, but seeing the story beyond that, and truly giving folks an opportunity and a chance. So I hope my actions say that I lead more than any title I have or anything else that I do. I want my actions to show empathy, grace, and compassion and humility. And I'm not perfect at that. I fall short every day in many, many different ways. But, I try to go back and unpack how I can do better moving forward.
So I love these type of conversations.
Yeah.
I love folks with so much depth. You somebody, man, you swim in the deep end.
I've been told, it's a lot for folks. Yeah.
But I love that because it gives so many different layers to you, to who you are, right, as a human. And man, you mentioned something in there in regards to, especially in like the church space, people may be church on paper, but in real life, man, I miss those old wristbands that said, what would Jesus do? Right. So I appreciate you mentioning that. You keep talking about unpacking a lot.
Yeah.
What led you to recognize, okay, let me step into some therapy spaces to better myself? Because man, I'm a Black man in America.
Yep.
And how do I be the best version of me? What started you on your journey even there?
Yeah, I think I've always had multiple layers to who I am.
Okay.
And for a very long time, I've tried to compartmentalize who I was. So like, you can't be a Black man and be in, spaces that Black men don't traditionally occupy. You can't have these progressive views and then go and break bread with somebody who has a completely different ideology of you. And for a very long time, I listened to societal standards that told me that I could not do those things, that I had to abide by these social norms or else I'm a sellout. I am not truly a Black male in its most authentic form. I can't be who I am fully because that's just not what has been prescribed to me. But then I had to ask who prescribed the prescription. And it was society.
Yeah.
And so, I always tell people like, look, my story is not perfect. My personal story, my professional story, my love story, not perfect. But I refuse to compartmentalize who I am out of fear of what somebody is going to say about me or judge me for. And so I think that's kind of how I began to say like, I'm gonna show up as me because I think we are all complex, complicated humans. And Audre Lorde says that none of us live a single issue life. None of us do.
Yeah.
So why have we not as a society been more vocal about what it means to be Black and to be a man and to have all these different layers of who we are, a business owner and an entrepreneur and, a community activist and why have we not created space for more folks to show up like that? So I want to be that example that you don't have to be boxed in by anybody's definition.
That part.
Yeah.
And you walk in that on the daily.
I'm trying.
Listen, some say I'm a motivational speaker, but you got me over here energized.
Let's go.
And we 5 minutes in, right? But man, I think there's so much power in that comma, right? In that and. And a lot of people try to hide that and.
Yeah.
Man, what you mentioned, right? We're not a singular issue people.
Nope.
Man, when I used to professionally have the title of diversity manager.
Yeah.
Because I still do the work.
Absolutely.
Right? One thing that I noticed, I'm like, and I went in there green. I want to make change. I want to make sure that Black folks is represented in the workspace. We can show up. I'm like, everybody got something
1,000%
that they fighting for.
Yep.
And I know that you're an advocate for community. Black advocate, right? Yeah. You got to work with the pageantry in Miss Kansas, right? So I know you're a women's rights advocate in that space as well.
I feel a lot in that space, but that goes back to, I got to be in the space to get better, and I have to be comfortable with failing at it because that's sometimes the success is in failure. I do advocate for women, and I'm proud of that, and I know that doesn't earn me a lot of points in a lot of people's book. But at the same time, that's what energizes me. And, being a women's rights activist or an advocate for women's rights doesn't mean that, I don't push back against women or I don't challenge women or I don't, whatever the case may be. It means that I think of them so much as my equal that I know that they can sit in the same lane as me. that, you know, they can be just as good as me, that they deserve to occupy the same spaces as I do. And when I do not see that happening, when I don't see them being given the chance to do that or to thrive to their fullest potential, like it's up to me to exercise my voice and my privilege as a man to say, something ain't right here.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't she at the table?
Come on.
Like, why are we talking about women's healthcare without women actually being at the table? That's a problem. So we got to be able to acknowledge these things. And when we choose to remain silent, we're doing a disservice to ourselves and our community.
Yeah. Ooh, but I tell you, preaching. You now the pastor kid thing is showing up. It's showing up heavy. How do you recognize what you want to be out loud about?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think especially as we navigate in these spaces, and you professional like me in spaces sometimes where we might be the only one in the room. Right? And so we may become the monolith in views of folks we're in the room with, or the singular voice, like, oh, you represent all things Black, right? How do you choose when to say, you know what, this is for me to stand up on it. You know what, this ain't my battle, but I know who could get on the front line for this.
Yeah. I always ask myself what's necessary. And what's necessary sometimes is not always being vocal in those spaces. I've learned this from a couple of Black leaders in the city of Wichita.
Yeah.
And I will say that there are some leaders you go into rooms, and for the longest time, at least throughout my college journey, I would be in rooms with some of these Black leaders, and there would be clear, in my opinion, like clear wrongdoing happening. And like they would just sit back and not say anything in that moment. And I would always get frustrated because I felt like, well, why aren't you speaking up? That's an injustice. Like, you are being complacent if you're not speaking up. But what I failed to realize is like they were speaking up. They would leave that room and they will allow the actions to speak for themselves. Whether that is getting on the phone and calling, you know, somebody to say like, hey, this is happening. We need to step in and this is how we're going to do it, and not disrupting the space in that moment. So what's necessary is how I ask myself. And sometimes it's not always flipping over the table in the moment. Sometimes it is about flipping over the table. And I've been known to do that too. But you got to always ask what's necessary, who's at stake, what's at stake, and what is going to be the end result as a result of me, you know, contributing that action. I was the student body president. A lot of people forget that, you know, I was very vocal about a lot of things. And as a result of that, I don't even think I shared this publicly before. Maybe I have, but I couldn't even get a job after I graduated.
After serving as a student body president at one
student body president, had did all these things, have fought for community, have fought for what I felt was right. Social justice, racial equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, you know, people read the headlines, and what they saw wasn't what I saw. Because what I saw was, I'm doing what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. That's what I'm called to do, right? I think what they saw was something different. And I think, you know, liability is real. And there were some folks who I love and loved me, still didn't offer me a job. I was down to my last dime, and I will give a shout out all the time to the few people who were in my corner. But Gwen Duggins, who I call Mama Duggins, a birth mother to 3, but a mama to many. I remember her pulling up at my house because I was like, I'm going to have to leave Wichita. Here I am with this master's degree, and I can't find a job to save my life because of how I led and how they perceived my leadership. And, you know, her and her husband and really her family stepped in a major way to fill some gaps for me to be able to stick it out a little bit longer until I found a job. So I always ask myself what's necessary, because I've been in a position before where doing what's right comes at a cost.
You know, it's what's ill though, and I don't want to get stuck in because I get stuck in one space of conversation, but that's cool because we're just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
But it's wild because you were a kid.
You feel me? A young kid that just wanted to do what was right or what he thought was right. And at 31 now, I recognize, and I tell people all the time, like, I was not always right. I can look back now and say some of the strategies I used probably weren't warranted.
Okay.
Some of the strategies that I used were warranted. And some of the things I experienced, nobody should ever experience those things. I cannot take accountability for what other people did to me. I have to let life handle that.
That's real.
But I can take accountability, right, for what I felt like I could have done better in that moment. But I was just a kid trying to do what I thought was right at the time on a college campus where you would think like learning is, you know what I mean? Like
That's
you
the
want
point.
them to learn. You want them to be able to fall on their behind and pick them back up and dust them off and say, see, boy, I told you.
Yeah.
I'll go on and do better. But that wasn't always the case.
But I think as we look at creating change, that's so necessary though.
1000%.
Right? Because though, and not make it a martyr or a sacrifice thing, but like, sometimes it takes somebody to be so loud that it gives other folks a voice to recognize like, okay, I can speak up. Maybe I see what happened to him, but now I want to speak up a little bit more.
Yeah.
I always say, you need, when we talk creating change, especially Black impact wise, right? You need folks that are on the front line, getting tased, getting the dogs pulled on them. You need lawyers to help mitigate and litigate, right? You need the whole gamut to create change.
1000%.
Right. And so I think it's dope that you were and able to recognize now, like, okay, I could have did a little different.
Yeah.
But then your story wouldn't be your story.
Right.
You feel me?
I'm grateful for that.
You feel me?
I'm grateful for that test because the testimony is loud, proud, and unapologetic.
Off top.
And I also think I was really blessed and privileged to be able to experience that at 2021. Because now at 31, I now know how to move in spaces a little bit differently, where I can create some change and build consensus in a way that is truly impactful. It took me a very long time to understand the power of consensus building.
Yeah. So build on that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, and we do this in my 9 to 5, like you have to be able to work with people who are different than you, people who think, believe, act, like you just have to be able to work alongside folks who are different. Because ultimately, if the end goal is common good, right? Like if that's what we say we're advocating for, well, know that you can't preach to the choir and reach the common good. Because the choir, we already know the
they
lyrics,
know the song,
right? We know the song. We know what role we play. We know if we are alto, a soprano, a tenor, a bass. We know. We got to get to the other people to understand what lyrics they see on the sheet, and why they think they an alto when really they a soprano, and be able to have those conversations to reach common ground to be able to move forward. When we don't do that, well, then we got a silo over here singing this song, a silo over there singing a whole nother song, and then we try to sing together. It sounds reckless. I mean, and we see that in our city right now. Like sometimes I feel like we are so worried about the wrong things that we forget to focus on the common good. Wichita has major potential. Yeah. And we've seen Wichita move in the right direction in many ways. But then we've also seen the barriers and the challenges that come with ego, that come with lack of consensus building. And I've just recognized, like, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of bringing people together.
Off top. I think the illest thing on that too is like, I never see the people that have the distractors or the folks that are creating some type of rift here. I never see them in real life. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Like social media has this thing where, of course, everybody has a voice, but it makes everybody feel like their voice is the right voice. Like you can talk, you got the right to speak your mind, speak your feelings, but is it productive? Is it positive? And is it on point with where we're going? Right. And everybody also has an opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to stick to somebody in a space that echoes what I got to say. Yeah. Right. And that's wild.
Yeah. Freedom of speech is not freedom from consequence.
Ooh, that's a bar.
Yeah.
That's a bar.
Yeah. You feel free to say whatever you want. Feel free to post whatever you want. But just know consequence is there.
Come on.
And when you least expect it, I mean, I tell people like, yeah, you feel empowered in that 150 character post. And then what's going to happen when, you go and seek that job opportunity and you get told no because of that 150 character post. Or, people start staring at you strange, or when it feels like the world against you, it doesn't feel like anybody is around you advocating or standing with you because they don't necessarily agree with what you said. So yeah, freedom of speech is not freedom from consequence.
Come on.
Yeah, I learned that at 2021. There's some consequences from speaking your mind.
So through that growth, because that's a 10-year difference, right? 10 years. Yeah. Wow, you've done a lot of different things and and been at the forefront, the back end of a lot of different change and pushes here in the city. And I know you a transplant to Wichita.
I am. Yep.
Right. And I think there's so much power in somebody who is not from Wichita.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody who was on the verge of like, yo, I'm out of here.
I was that guy.
Right. To now, part of your day-to-day effort is to retain folks in Wichita.
Yeah.
Explain to me how that all happened.
Yeah. So I originally moved to Wichita because of my father.
Okay.
And it was just supposed to be to visit my dad. So another part of my story is my senior year of high school, my father, who's a pastor in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, was relocated to St. Paul AME Church, Wichita, which is the oldest Black church in Wichita. And I was like, ain't no way. Ain't no way I'm leaving California my senior year of all things to go to Wichita. I called it Wichita at the time. I was like, ain't no way. So my dad, who has always been about showing me tough love, which for the longest time I struggled with my father growing up because of the tough love he showed me.
Okay.
But he was like, all right, you want to be grown? Like, figure it out. And he left. They left. And so I slept on my godmom's couch.
They left you in California?
They left me in California because I was adamant. I am not moving to Wichita my senior year of high school. And he was like, you want to be grown? You're going to be grown. Yeah. And gosh, so much resentment at the time for my father for kind of doing that. But what it taught me is, you got to work for the things that you want. And you got to sacrifice for the things that you want. So I slept on my godmom's couch throughout my entire senior year. Okay. I graduated from high school early. I got a full-time job at McDonald's and started, taking college courses, community college courses. That led me to become a first-generation college student. Got accepted into college was a big deal for me. I never saw myself in college. Parents didn't go to college, and so I was first gen. I was like, oh well, I'll go visit my dad before I go off to college.
Go to
Wichita, yeah. And I stepped off that plane. People see the new airport here now, but in 2011, that airport, it looked like a house,
right?
like a basic house with a plane runway. I was like,
you know how they always say Mexico looks in the movies?
That's
how it looked coming in.
Oh, this is crazy. Like I most definitely made the right decision not coming here. Met up with a woman by the name of Natalie Toney, who worked at Wichita State at the time. Yeah. She attended St. Paul. She was like, you should just take a tour of Wichita State. I was like, I'll take a tour, but I ain't coming here. Sam, I took a tour and I fell in love. I don't know. I believe it was God telling me, like, this is where you belong. And 2 weeks before school started, I applied to Wichita State, got accepted, and I had everything shipped from California here. And I started my new life in Wichita. And I will tell you that was probably one of the greatest decisions that I've made in my entire life. And I just truly believe that God led me here for a reason and a purpose. And I just am a firm believer that in Jeremiah 29:11, because of that. I had no idea what Wichita had to offer me. All I knew was I fell in love with my church. I fell in love with St. Paul. And when it came close to me, having to leave, go back to California, I just felt something in my spirit saying, like, this is where you belong. This is where you're supposed to worship. This is where you're supposed to build. Yeah. And then when I fell in love with Wichita State, I was like, all right, God, I trust you. And so I came here and my parents left my junior year of college. They got relocated to St. Louis. And I was like, this is home now. I'm not going with y'all. I'm staying here. And I've been here ever since 2011. Wow. So Wichita's home for me.
Wichita is home. And now you make sure that other folks recognize the power, the growth, and all those opportunities that are here. Yeah. As I'm listening to your story, Joseph, I'm hearing some foundational wise, right? It sounds like Black women have really held you down.
1,025%.
Strangers.
Black women have shown up for me in Wichita in ways like I could not have even imagined. Dr. K-Monk Morgan, Danielle Johnson, Dr. Marche Fleming Randall, Black women. I think of like Black women who show up for me now in like the slightest ways too, where they see me and whenever they see me, they check in. LaShonda Garnes, Connie Mansell. I'm Marquita Atkins. Yeah. It is absolutely insane. I talked about Mama Duggins. Yeah. Black women have shown up for me time and time again. Overwhelmingly. There have been other women who are not Black who have showed up for me too. But overwhelmingly, it's been Black women. They have stood in the gap for me. I remember being student body president and getting some quite frankly, death threats. I'm just going to be honest for some of the decisions and choices that I've made. And I just remember vividly Danielle Johnson picking up the phone boldly and calling leadership and saying, oh, no, we don't do something about this. Like, we don't protect him. I will always be a fan for the strength, the resilience, the passion, the grit that Black women possess.
Yeah.
And Black women who taught me that I deserve to seize that was a really big deal. And Danielle helped navigate that. Like, this is your superpower.
Yeah.
Like, you can't continue to compartmentalize yourself out of fear of what Black men or other people would think of you. Like, you got to let yourself be free so that other people can see a light in you that they need to see. And that has just been a game changer for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've mentioned it in a few videos, few conversations, but I know the stats show like Black women and homosexual males shrink the most. So I find some irony or some power in Black women giving you the power, right, to not shrink yourself. Yeah. Right. That's fire.
Yeah. They have shown up for me time and time again.
Yeah.
And I think, I have an affinity for what the Miss Kansas organization does whenever they do it. But I have a huge affinity right now because we have a Black woman as Miss Kansas. Yeah. And I'm standing 10 toes down for her.
100%.
The way that Black women have shown up for me, I'm going to be a Black man that shows up for her. And I think she is also just like strong, empowered, confident, resilient. All of 4'11", all of 4'11", but still truly everything that this state needs and deserves at this present moment, right?
100%. Listen, there's so many. That's why it's called thinking out loud, because my mind gets to going a million miles per hour. So, brother to brother, right? What does it look like as a Black man to show up for our sisters? Right, hearing how they've shown up for you, right? But I think there's some opportunities, especially in today's climate, right? We got Kamala running for president, and brothers just tripping.
Oh my gosh, big time.
It's kind of ill to see, right? Yeah, and not even from a political side, but the way that they're speaking about this Black woman who's in power. And I think to my wife, I think to my daughter, I think to my sisters, I think to my community, I think to the Black women I'm around, and I'm like, you niggas is tripping. Yeah. Excuse me. I'm just keeping it frank with you, right?
Yeah.
What does it look like showing up for our sisters in today's type of climate?
The first thing I think it is asking them how they want us to show up. Because sometimes how we show up, the reason why folks feel like we're not showing up for them is not because we aren't doing something, it's because we're not doing what they've asked for.
Okay.
And so I think the first thing is asking, how do you want me to show up and what role do you want me to play in this space? And sometimes it is being the vocal advocate and saying, no, she has the floor. Hey, she was talking. And sometimes it's having that barbershop talk.
Yeah.
With your brothers, your friends, and say, hey, the way we talking about women in this space is not cool right now. Like, I get it. And have your conversations. We can have conversations and have lighthearted conversations without degrading.
Facts.
And it's a yes and. It's a yes and, right? Like, we're not trying to censure you, but at the same time, we're not trying to degrade this woman either. And I think the third thing I would say is actually, once you've committed to showing up, you have to actually show up.
Word.
Lip service is not enough. Lip service is not enough. I think what we see Vice President Harris going through right now, and I love it. I love seeing, there are Black men who are coming out and being like, we're going to stand up. We're going to rise up for our Esther. We're going to rise up for all the Black women. And it's like, great. This post, though, is not moving the needle. It's not moving the needle for them. And I'm going to say this, all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
That's a bar.
So also you need to be mindful of how we are showing up for Black people, Black women, yes, but is that the best person to represent us, right? Because we got to be careful, because if we are not careful, we will box out great people from being able to lead and serve because they don't meet the identity politics that we want. That's not the case with Vice President Harris. I think Vice President Harris is a qualified servant leader who has shown up for our community time and time again, who a plus is happens to be a Black woman.
Word.
And she has fought for restorative justice. She has fought corporate banks who have scam folks. She has fought for the George Floyd Act that provides a level of accountability for law enforcement that violates the rights of people. She has done things. She has a record of actually accomplishing things. And she's been present in our community. She went to a historical Black college and university. She went to a public law school. She could have chosen to go anywhere. She chose to go the public route. So we got to also look at the track record of the individual and watch how they have shown up for us too, and to determine how we want to show up, right? And sometimes we got to show up having a tough love conversation.
That's real.
To be like, hey, you ain't it, and here's why.
I
love you, and I'm going to continue to show up for you, but I'm not going to show up in the way that you think you want me to show. I'm going to show up by sitting you down because I love you enough to say, before you even try to go here, we got to get this right first. And we hate having those conversations because it's work avoidance.
That's and that extends past
1,000%
the political space. That's like real, like 9 to 5s, personal relationships, right? Because accountability is a mug, right? And it's hard for folks it's hard twofold. I think it's hard for people to recognize how to hold somebody accountable, and it's hard for people to receive accountability, right? Because like we've been mentioning that and that comma, some would say, yo, just because you can't correct me because you're not moving correctly.
That's right.
Which is fair. But at the same time, if I'm moving bad, if I'm off kilter, just because you off kilter don't mean you can't let me know my shit stink.
That's right.
Right? If it stink, it stink.
Exactly.
You feel me?
Exactly.
And I think it's easy for folks to get lost in that. It's funny, Joe, just when I was Googling you, because I like to be a little prepared. I know you my friend, you my peoples, right? And a lot of the things we've talked about came up. But the thing that kept coming up, right, was leader. Leadership. Leadership, right? And it wasn't just titles.
That's important for me.
You feel me?
I don't want it to just be about titles. That's important for me for sure.
The verb was there. Right? So what does servant leadership look like to you? Or what does it mean for you even? Double question, I guess.
To me, it's about serving even when it's not in your best interest. The last year, I've had to do a lot of that soul searching. Of God, if I go and I have this conversation and somebody sees me out with this person, that might hinder me from something I want to do in the future, right? But if it's ask myself, like, is it for the common good? Okay, you got to take that L, then, brother. Like, you got to take the L because it's for the common good. Like, if you say you're about it, then don't just talk about it, be about it, right? And so you will see, like, my space, my personal universe is diverse in nature. And I know a lot of people don't like it, and I know a lot of people don't understand it, but they don't have to understand it because I know what my values are. My values don't change depending on who I'm around. Switch up like that. That's number one. Get you some friends that are more secure in their values if that's the case. And then two is I got to remember like what the end goal is. The end goal is, and it's always the common good. So that's number one. And number two is, gosh, I was just talking to someone about this. My story is one that is riddled of hardship. My childhood was not perfect. I went through a lot of things in my childhood. And so, like, I always think of the world not as it is, but the world as it should be. I will not accept the world as it is, but as it should be. And for me, servant leadership is working towards the world as it should be, even when it comes with difficulties, with people looking at you crazy because you said something that is just not within the social norm, or something that hasn't been done before. And ultimately it's giving people that hope, that renewed hope that they need to know that brighter days can lie ahead.
Word.
So that's what I needed when I was younger, and not too many people gave that to me. It wasn't until college I found folks who were able to like look at me and say like, "What is wrong with you? What don't you see in yourself?" Danielle Johnson was that person for me, and so I want to give back to the people the same thing, like especially the underdogs. I'm always rooting for you don't always see me rooting for the underdog.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. You know, it's power in that. I think a lot of times the way we grew up is we either continue that cycle or we move out of resentment of that cycle or trying to challenge that cycle, right? Or we show up for people the way we wish somebody showed up for us. So that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's fire.
Yeah. We got to unpack it, man.
Listen.
It's like in therapy. That's why I went back. I went back to therapy. It's like all these things from my childhood keep coming up. And I was like, why did my dad do that? Or why did my mom do this? And, you know, another part of my story is I don't know my biological mother. And it's so interesting because, you know, often people suspect that Black men don't have a relationship with their father.
Talk to me.
For me is I did not have a relationship with my mother. And so to the point that you made earlier, I feel like God, you know, tripled maximum, like restored that for me with all the Black women who are showing up in my life today.
Yeah.
And I have struggled with understanding why. And so I was like, I gotta go back to therapy and like unpack a lot of this. Game changer. Being in therapy for 2 months again has allowed me to see just like all the threads in my life and how I show up and the parts of me that are not healthy, not just for me, but for community that I need to work on because I'm not perfect. And I think it's important to both accept and vocalize because I don't want people looking at me thinking, I'll never be him or he has it all together. That's a lie. Don't crack this book open. Because if you do, you're going to see some things that make you uncomfortable. And that's okay with me because I hope that lets other people know like they don't have to be perfect either to lead, to learn, to serve. I feel like we were low key. There was like this something in the air where it was like, oh no, we don't talk about that. Or no, we don't act like we have it all together when we really don't. When in reality, we need to set ourselves free from that idea and start talking to people about our struggles so that somebody can see somebody who looks like them, who is successful and struggles with X, Y, and Z, because it gives them hope to say like, okay, I can do better. I can get better and I can still reach where I want to go. Like I'm not limited because of what I'm going through. This is temporary for me because look at such and such. That's what I want to be.
Yeah.
Like that's the hope that I hope to give other people.
Listen, I can hear the pastor kid in you when you get to preaching, Joseph. But no, man, you mentioned that. I mean, you mentioned a lot, and I'm so many spaces of conversation, right? But I want to look at the 90s babies, right? Because I'm 87, but I'm a 90s baby. I don't remember nothing from the 80s. And we definitely are part of that generation where we've now grown to have conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? I think in some spaces, it's almost a detriment to the generation under us, right? Because a lot of us are taking care of our parents as well as raising kids.
Yeah.
We're also healing our trauma because we recognize the trauma that we've had. And in some spaces, trying not to pass it on to the kids.
That's right.
Or in some spaces, ignoring the kids because we got to fix our shit.
Yeah.
Right. And I say we because I'm talking about all of us.
Absolutely.
Collectively, right?
1,000%.
And I know you were running for school board. Right. What prompted that type of energy to want to get into the schools and create that change?
Education changed my life.
Okay.
You know, despite all the bad I went through at Wichita State University, Wichita State changed my life. It was that institution that gave me the chance to lead, learn, serve, and fail. And there were great moments too. There were aha moments and light bulb moments that inspired me to ditch my plan to go into law, because that was the original aspiration, to go into education.
Yeah.
And being involved in the community and understanding and knowing the statistics of overwhelmingly the students in USD 259 were on free or reduced lunch. Overwhelmingly, many of them were considered low income. There was a McKinsey-Vento program, still is, where there was a large number of homeless students in the public school system, that there were multiple languages spoken. And honestly, like the connotation, or I guess the perceptions that people had on the public school system was very similar to what people would have said about the schools that I went to as a kid. And so knowing that education was the pathway to me breaking the cycle of poverty in my life, running for school board was my way of saying, like, what I've learned, I want to give that game to as many students as I can and work to create systems within the public education system to ensure that those opportunities were not just available, but they were accessible to the children and the families. And I still believe that we need to relook at some of our systems, and not just USD 259, but nationwide. The evolving nature of who we are serving, it has changed significantly. You know, I dealt with a lot of things when I was in school, K through 12, but I never had to worry about if when I go into school, I'm going to be able to come back out because there's a school shooter going to happen or going to come into the room today. So I just think, like, at 26 years old, running for school board, it was also about looking at the folks who were making decisions and recognizing that not only did they not look like me from a generational standpoint, I didn't feel that they were in tune. And so I believe that we need the wisdom of our elders, but we also need young people to craft the best vision possible.
That's real. So let me ask this then, even as we continue to build on your servant leadership, right? And you stepping into spaces because you see the gap that needs to be filled. Let me ask it. So I'm thinking out loud. Did the desire to pour back into community the way you wish was poured into you come before or after therapy?
Oh, definitely before. I owe that to my church.
Okay.
My church, I'm born and raised AME, and the AME church, I feel like really, we are about social action. We are about community. It's about, you see something, you get out there and you do something about it. You don't just talk about it. So I came here in 2011, and I think shortly after, a couple of years later, I was out here protesting with the Wichitas, for the Trayvon Martin situation, stand your ground law, because we in Kansas have a very similar law as Florida did that allowed for that situation to occur. And so there were folks looking around like, who's this guy? It's like, I'm just here because, my church has taught me to show up for community when it matters most and understand how these laws and how certain things impact us on the day to day. So it definitely was before therapy, but I owe that to my church.
I love that. I love that. So you a thorough man of action. I
try to be, and I feel like it's so crazy because folks who have dated in the past, they're like, you are so passionate about everything. Like, I feel like I could never say something that goes against what you firmly believe. And I'm like, no. Like, we can have a conversation about it, but I'm going to tell you how I feel. And I'm going to say it with some fire, and I'm going to say it with my chest, because that's what my faith has taught me. Like, you can be open to different perspectives, and you should be. But you always ask, where's your data? Like, okay, you believe that? Where's your data? Where's your data that says that that's true? Yeah,
factual.
Yeah, if you're gonna come at me and try to change my position on something, please, you got to come with some substance and some depth.
Proof in the pudding.
Yeah.
Come on. That's real. So we continue to talk the servant leadership thing, and I know you had Lead for America.
Yeah.
Right. The sweaters that y'all hooked 2 Beats Boutique up with was dope, by the way. I should have rocked one today. Now that I'm thinking about it, that would have been crazy, but it's hot outside. Do you see yourself in the future being in grander roles, right, community-wise? Lead for America, I say that almost like that's a small thing. And I'm not by any means saying that that's a small space. That's Lead for America.
Right.
But do you see yourself in grander roles in the future?
Yeah. And what's wild about my time with Lead for America is it's a nonprofit organization that was started by somebody who was, they were in college at the time. Okay. We were about a 7-year-old organization, and I was hired to build out the Kansas affiliate. So it was like my own little baby startup. Okay. Which I have a deeper appreciation for entrepreneurs and folks who do it on the day-to-day, because it is tough work. And so being able to, see that, but get out into not just Wichita, but rural parts of Kansas and see disparities and challenges there. Yeah, it is reignited a passion in me to want to serve community, because I truly do believe like consensus building, relationship building, understanding your community is what will help drive transformational change. And I think there's a difference between transactional change and transformational change. And I believe in giving people the tools and the power to make the difference and working alongside them to do it. Lead for America taught me that. And it also taught me that I do see a bigger role in community at some point in the future. I don't know when. My spidey senses tell me soon. Or at least I'll try soon. But we need leaders in nonprofit, in the public sector, private sector, government sector, faith sector, who see and get people.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't have told you that 5 years ago.
Okay.
But, if you don't get people, I don't think you'll ever be effective in any role that you're serving in. From the grassroots to the grass tops. You will never be effective if you can't. Everybody has a story behind them. And if we are not doing the work to understand what those stories are and why they show up the way they show up, you'll never be able to work with them to bring good policy or to bring good products or business to a community. You gotta understand people. You gotta be able to get people.
Even in AI season.
1000%.
Right. The people connection, you'll never be able to, especially in a servant leadership type space, especially in a community change, political change, faith change, medicinal change, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? But it's those different spaces.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you one more question, Joseph, because we talked a lot about growth. We talked a lot about where you headed. We talked a lot about where you are now, right? What would 31-year-old Joseph tell 21-year-old Joseph?
Stay the course. Stay the course. I think that would have, I guess the folks who did tell me that at 21, like I'd be walking around town, and a faculty member who didn't want to be seen talking to me in public would pull me off to the side and say, "Thank you so much for what you're saying and what you're doing." So, stay the course, essentially, is what they were telling me. And I don't know if I would have, I would not have guessed that my time at 2021 leading would have shaped the perspective on leadership and bridge building at 31 that I have today. And again, I didn't do everything right. I didn't do everything wrong either. But it taught me the importance of asking yourself, is it necessary? Working with different people from different walks of life to bring good for the common good, and the importance of staying the course. So even when things get rough and rocky, even when there are folks out on social media who are calling you everything but a child of God, and that's hard for me, because I tell people all the time, look, I'm saved and I'm sanctified, but some days it's only about 85%, and I'm working on myself. So I pray that somebody don't catch me on the wrong day and I have to go there with them, because it's still in me. It ain't never leaving me. But it's also like sometimes you got to be wise enough to tune that stuff out, stay the course, and remember the end goal.
Yeah, I love that. Listen, it's funny, as I film episodes and we have conversation, I always say my last question, and then I get more questions.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing I do want to ask before we part, because I think it's powerful for folks who are stepping into for young leaders,
absolutely,
for leaders who've been in leadership roles for a while, to recognize, how do you navigate the naysayers? How do you navigate the pushback? How do you navigate the challenges of public opinion or public thought without getting off course?
Yeah, I've learned a lot from elders.
Okay.
And one of the things that you will hear seasoned leaders say is, "A hurt dog will holler." And so what do you do when you hear a hurt dog holler? I think sometimes our initial response is to respond. When in reality, it's like, "Oh, a hurt dog will holler. I hurt your feelings," because there's some truth to it. That's okay. We're going to keep moving forward, because that's a distraction, right? Like that. If I stop and respond to every hurt dog that hollered, with every decision I made, with every statement I said, then I'd be so distracted that it would take years to get to the end goal. That's not what I want. I want to get there as efficient and quickly as I can. And the second thing is, right, like, you got to take in what's good for you and spit out what's not. And so sometimes in criticism, be it constructive or just criticism, there is good in that.
Yeah.
If you take the time to unpack it. And it's good in it all. There are some folks who have said some things to me that have been very hurtful. And I think that they intended to hurt me too with that criticism. But a mature and a wise individual will say, okay, let me remove my emotion and just look at the facts here. And if I do that, I can discern whether or not I could throw all of the criticism away or take out the bits and pieces of the criticism that's going to help me to lead better and show up better for myself and for community. And that requires maturity, and it requires wisdom, and it requires wisdom that you can't get from yourself. You have to look to people who have come before you. And so when people are like, oh, young people we just need to take over. It's like, I'm down with us taking over and I'm down with us leading. I also know better. I know that we need our elders.
Yeah.
Because there's an infinite wisdom that they possess that we cannot deny.
Facts.
And they got through some very tough times because they knew how to navigate and stand tall in some things. And that's what I love about my church.
Yeah.
I know I'm like, this is problematic, but I'm like 1 of 10 in terms of like young people in the church. But I love being able to walk into my church and soak up the wisdom of the elders around me. And especially the elders that look at me and say, like, you know, we need to move out the way and push people like you forward. But they're not saying like, do it on your own and forget all about us and our struggles and our lessons learned. They're saying like, we want to come alongside you. And that's the best feeling ever.
I love that. It made me think of two things. That one of my favorite Jay-Z lyrics is, I ain't tell you sell drugs. Now, Hov did that. So hopefully you don't have to go through that.
Right.
And then the other piece, multiple pieces, can't be a slave to feedback.
That's right.
Right. I had a director tell me that one time, and it's like, yo, you take the feedback, but don't be a slave to it.
That's right.
Then the other part was there's truth in every joke.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. There is. There's truth in every joke. 1000%.
You feel me? And then the last, we can't lose the recipes.
That's right.
We cannot lose the recipes. Who gonna cook the mac and cheese?
Yeah.
You feel me? Like, we cannot lose the recipes that come with having our elders around us. Come on, take it. Right? Because I think it's easy for hungry young folks, energized folks to be like, nah, y'all ain't never been through. You don't know what I'm talking.
Right.
Each generation, only thing different is the resources and the way that things are communicated.
1000%.
Every generation has a struggle that is relative to the times.
Yeah.
Right?
We've been here before. Because we've been here before, just because it looked different, we've been here before.
That part.
But we also know how to navigate it.
Yes.
Right? We can't lose the recipe.
You can't lose the recipes.
Yeah, because grandma recipe was best recipe, right? So
you feel me?
You know, we gotta utilize that recipe to know how to move forward.
Yes. And then I'm gonna shut up because now I'm just thinking a lot. But I think even as I think to youth, older generation conversations, right? It's so easy for younger generations to get thrown off course when they hear criticism or feedback from older generations because it doesn't sound the way they want it to sound.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's like, yo, you know what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
Take it and run with it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, as a DEI practitioner, you know, I go into some corporate spaces or rural spaces. And, you know, when we start opening up the conversation, everybody is so afraid to say something because they're so afraid to offend. They don't want to be labeled racist. They don't want to be labeled all these things. And so the first thing I say is, look, I'd rather you say it and be corrected later than for you to hold back how you're feeling. Because if you hold back how you're feeling, we're not going to be able to get to the root of the issue.
Facts.
We got to get to the root of the issue. So let's create a space where you can just say it. And now, look, you may say some things that I may be like, oh, yeah, we need to talk about that. We need to unpack the racism in that, the overt or covert, right? But I'm not here to judge how you say it.
That part.
I'm here to help provide some guidance and education on why it's problematic that you said it that way. But like, let's put it out there so we can move forward. You know, and I think I'm a millennial.
Same.
And the generation after, they definitely are a little bit more bolder than I was. It's so interesting that I was labeled the radical student body president. And I'm like, I ain't got nothing on. I ain't got nothing on this next generation. They come to your front door. They knock on the front door like, what's up? Like, you pass that policy, it's a problem. And I love it. I love it. And we have to respect that.
100%.
We have to respect that fire in the young people that are like that, because guess what? They're holding folks' feet to the fire, and so people could see. There's documents out there that are problematic in nature and that would have never reached us had we not had young people who said, we're going to dissect all of this and we're going to put it in a 30-second TikTok video so you know what the problem is with this plan. As a millennial that utilizes social media, I wasn't clever enough to think about utilizing social media like that.
Yeah.
These young people are changing the game and how people can retrieve their information in a way that is quick, but also fact-based and entertaining at the same time.
Yes.
And that's the future of leadership. That's the future of politics. That is the future. So we can choose to ignore it and hate on it if we want to. We're going to get left behind when it's time for them to step up and lead. And I don't want that. I want to be like the elders are with me, going alongside them.
Yeah.
Not forgetting that they're around and exist.
The power of technology. I have to say, they was probably looking crazy at the first brother with a calculator.
yeah, absolutely. Now they got the iPhone, they can just pull it
Come
out.
on, everything at once.
Yeah.
And see, I could continue to go, but I definitely, I want to tell you, Joseph, this was refreshing for me.
Thank you.
This was energizing for me.
Good. You feeling the spirit I'm on today?
You feel me? We in sync now.
There
Word
we
to
go.
Justin and them.
There we go.
Before we part, are there any words that you want to share with the world?
I love what you're doing. I
appreciate that.
I think what you are doing is creating space for people to think out loud. And I think we need to do more of that, because when we give people, like I said, the space to just say it, it releases something in them. And they don't even realize that they're letting their light shine in a way that gives other people permission to do the same.
Yeah.
And so thank you for creating the space for folks to think out loud.
I received that.
Yeah.
I received that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you pulling up today.
Absolutely.
And hearing your journey, hearing your growth. I've known you for quite some time.
Yeah.
Right. And hearing you and knowing the work behind the words.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that somebody hearing this is not only inspired, not only motivated, but energized to go do the work and practicing the discipline to stay focused if they don't got this video on.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Absolutely.
You are somebody of power.
Thank you.
And I'm prayerful and I'm confident that you will continue to do the work that you're doing.
Yeah, God willing.
Right. Amen.
God willing. I'm excited to do the work, and I want to do the work. And if it's in God's plan, I'll do it in all the ways in which He calls me to do it. And I'm grateful for the privilege to do the work. Pressure is a privilege, and being able to work within the pressure is a privilege too. And so I don't take that for granted at all.
Come on. Loved ones, this has been Thinking Out Loud with Samuel David, with my special guest, Mr. Joseph Shepard. Y'all be blessed. And we out.
Look both ways when you cross that street. Dot your I's and cross your T's. Measure twice, but cut once. Love life, live it up, bruh. Dream is good, do the work too. There ain't nothing you can't work through, and there ain't nothing I can't handle. There ain't nothing I can't handle. I look to the sky, and I thank God that I'm alive. I look to my wife, and I thank God she by my side. I've been through a lot, but I survived. It weighs on my heart from time to time, but there ain't nothing I can't handle.